right, we are going live. And welcome to God's Views on Political News, everybody. Hope that you can see us. Please come on in. And Bill and I are live right now. And this is a little different setup than we usually have. Brandon is out today. And Bill, maybe you want to tell us why Bill,
why Brandon?
Today. Yes.
Well, they had to take the baby. I'm a grandpa now. I'm a papa.
You're a papa.
And so the baby had a doctor's appointment today. And so Melody had to have a C-section. So she needs a little assistance. So Brandon is with her. So that's why we're kind of doing it this way today. But anyway.
Now, I want to, I'm seeing here, oh, there you are. Now it's perfect. Good. We're on the page. Everybody should be hearing us. And if you will, just go ahead and share. Hi, Thomas Kincaid and Linda Norman and a couple other people. Tiffany, good to see you. Robin, good to see you. Robin says, congratulations, Bill and family.
Thank you. Thank you.
And everybody is on Cloud Hub now. And if you will, on Cloud Hub, if you'll just go ahead and share this with everybody. And Loretta, good to see you. Good morning. Shalom, Stephanie. Good to see everybody. Dawn Erickson, Tiffany. We've got so many people coming in. I'm so glad that you're here. And again, this is our backup until Brandon gets back. So hopefully we'll have no problems. Linda Steinman says, congratulations, Bill and Beth. Well, I don't know. Did you have the baby or was it Brandon? Just kidding. It feels like it did, right?
Oh, I got off relatively easy. I told them going in that, I'm going to do the thing where they used to do it, a long time ago. The dad or the granddad or whatever stays the heck away from all that's going on. And just let me know when it's over.
Wash your hands of that one. I'll just be the grandparent for the weekend, right? Is that what
I'm not good with all of that. That drama that happens right there at the end. So my wife Beth was there for the whole thing.
Nice.
And Brandon was as well.
And Brandon was as well.
She went into labor, and it was a good 36 hours. From when everything started really kind of turning real. Or it might have been longer than that, but Brandon was there for the whole thing. Beth was there for the whole thing. And anyway, I got updates.
Well, Linda says, congratulations, Melody and Brandon. Thomas Kincaid says, congratulations, praying all goes well. And Dawn says, good day, congratulations. Michelle is saying congratulations. Telma, Linda Steinman, everybody. So, and Lori Normandy, don't worry right now today, because this is temporary. Bill's YouTube I'm not streaming through Bill's YouTube. You can see it on my YouTube if you want to go there at the Susan Knowles channel, but we will put it later on Shoreshim, and it's there now for you to see it, and it will be there later. And somebody can upload it later on your YouTube page, Bill. So.
Yeah, it'll eventually get up on the YouTube page, but not live.
Not live. So
not today anyway.
We're doing all that we can today. So, all right. So we had a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about kind of what's on everybody's mind these days. And hello, Bethany Cloud, Grandma. And
is Bethany on there?
Bethany is on here too. And Alan, good to see you. And a lot of people are talking about now, Antifa. We're talking about Black Lives Matter. We're talking about CHAZ, which is Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone in Seattle, which has now changed its name to Capitol Hill Organized Protest. So we can't seem disorganized. So we got to change the name and hope that it sticks, right? But Bill, there's been a big controversy lately, and I'm hearing a lot of it. And for me, it saddens me. Maybe it won't sadden other people, but I hear a lot of people who say, Christians ought to be taking a knee right there with Black Lives Matter and just going along with them, supporting them. I'd kind of like to talk about that, what you feel your opinion is on that.
Well, first of all, in terms of, who matters or what life matters, I'm one of those that fall into the camp that everybody's life matters, I don't think that one race, one culture is any more or any less important. And I don't think that any culture or any race is exempt from good people. And I don't believe that any of them are exempt from bad people. The Bible tells us that, and I'm paraphrasing, that from his youth, mankind has evil in his heart. And so there is no race that is exempt from that. There's none that's any more evil or any less evil than the other. So, all life matters. As far as what kind of generated all of this, I'm probably going to get in big trouble here. Nobody knows what provoked that cop to do what he did. Unless he's come out and made a statement that I did it because this guy was black, nobody really knows why he did it.
It could be George Floyd. We're talking
right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It could be that the cop did it because Mr. Floyd was black. It could be that. It could be that the cop did it because he's a jerk. Mm-hmm. So nobody really knows. But what that has done is a lot of assumptions have been made because of, I believe, political correctness and things like that. And this created all this controversy. So for the people who would say we need to take a knee with Black Lives Matter, first of all, I would have to have some questions answered as to Black Lives Matter and why, what are their, explain their seeming Marxist affiliations. Do they indeed support groups in Israel that are very anti-Israel, which has been reported? Those are questions that I would have to have answered first.
They have
but
a
then
very
again,
pro-abortion stance.
Right. Well, and then again, my question is, all right, do Black Lives matter? Of course they do. White lives matter. Hispanic lives, they all matter. So there's no question about that. This seems to be more of a political thing rather than a thing about life. And I realize that there are people who feel very differently about that. All right. But, if Black Lives matter, and they do, then why aren't they raising Cain in Chicago to protest black on black crime? Why aren't they raising Cain in front of Planned Parenthood, which destroys more black babies than all the police departments combined? So it has this political edge to it, is what I'm trying to get at. And so for that reason, I would not take a knee with any protest that is organized by Black Lives Matter, because there is a political edge to this. I think it goes beyond what is being presented, that this is just about in support of black people and their being the subject of unfair and unwarranted prejudices from these police departments. So let me make this statement here before people, kind of get all bent out of the frame. Is there prejudice in the world? Yes, there is. Are there prejudiced cops? Yes, I'm sure there are. Are there prejudiced white people? Yeah, there are. Are there prejudiced black people? Yeah, there are. There's prejudice everywhere. And so my bigger point here is this. You're not going to change the condition of a person's heart by a protest. I'm not saying it's wrong to voice your opinion. I'm just saying that as believers, we should understand that the matters of the heart are not going to be swayed by me holding a sign. Anyway.
Well, and here's the thing. I think we have to remember who Black Lives Matter started out to be. Do you remember?
I remember. That's why.
Yeah. But let's go back to 2016 and all the times that they came in and disrupted college campuses, and they were violent. They were physically violent at that time. They're more of a Marxist group than they are any type of Christian group. Their chants are for dead cops. What do we want? Pigs in a blanket. Yeah. What are all that? So it's not like that. These people this group is a wholesome Christian group. I'm not saying that there aren't some Christians who are supporting the group and there aren't some Christians in the group, but by and large, this group is supported by Soros and other people, other dark forces, kind of support this group. And when people say, the Black Lives Matter, people who support Black Lives Matter always get mad when you say all lives matter, because as an example, the other day I said something, happy birthday, President Trump, and somebody who thought because they know my stance on it, and I believe in all lives matter, they said, well, all birthdays matter, like as if I was going to be offended by that. And I said, yes, all birthdays matter, and President Trump's birthday matter. To me, it's all the same thing. Encompassed in all lives matter are Black lives, Asian lives, white lives, in Hispanic lives, and anything in between.
Yeah, well, I've seen how people get, and people I know who get upset that if you say, well, all lives matter,
right?
They think that somehow or another that's a cop out. Well, if that gives you heartburn, maybe you're the one that needs to do the checkup, because they should. Should people, discriminate or be violent toward people because of the color of their skin or the culture or the language? Of course not. As believers, we understand that, and we should support that, and we should stand against those kinds of things. I'm just of the opinion that this is a lot more political than it is spiritual. Again, the Black Lives Matter organization has Marxist affiliations from its very inception, and if that is not the case now, then for somebody like me, they'd have to make that very, very obvious and very, very clear. When they're going around and people are having these protests, and of course they'll say, well, these other people that are among the protests, that get violent and burn things and rioters, they're not really part of what's going on. Okay, then make certain that you distance yourself from that and that you denounce those kinds of things, because it's kind of hard for the average person like me who sees these statues of George Washington and Ben Franklin and Abraham Lincoln defaced, or the memorial in Massachusetts that's dedicated to the Black regiment that fought in the Civil War, and they defaced that. That to me shines a light on there's ignorance there.
Yeah.
They just absolutely don't know any better, which if they're ignorant about that, what else are they ignorant of? What other information are they ignorant of? And so that's why I would say, as a believer, no, I'm probably not going to take a knee with Black Lives Matter as far as the organization and things like that, because there's a lot of questions I have about what their motives are, what their agenda is. If they're supporting groups that are very anti-Israel, that they consider Israel to be an apartheid state, then no, I'm not going to bow a knee with those people, because I'm not going to associate myself with those kinds of things. Does that mean that I don't care about Black people and Black lives? No, it doesn't. Does it mean that I don't care about others? It doesn't have anything to do with that. I am just going to be one of those who's not going to follow the mob mentality. And that is what believers need to be very, very careful about. It's just, kind of go along with the mob mentality, because the crowd that is, crying Hosanna on one day will be the mob that is saying crucify him on the next. So this is something we need to be very, very careful about. Should we voice our opinions and take a stand against things that are unjust? Yes. Should we take a stand against those things that are unrighteous? Yes. Should we take a stand for life? Absolutely. Black lives, white lives, unborn babies, these kinds of things. Should we allow violence to be part of that? No, we should not. Should we allow rioting to be a part of that? No, we should not. Should we allow calls for rebellion and overthrow and all these things to be connected with it? No, we shouldn't. And so if you want to convince me that your cause is righteous, then behave in a righteous manner.
Well, and that's true. And there were no, that I can see, not very good examples of righteous behavior. When you're blocking traffic, when you're rioting, and this was back in, 2016, 2017. It's like they're changing their image right now. And by the way, Bethany said, "So happy birthday to everyone who was ever born," so they can be all lives matter.
Because all birthdays matter, right?
Exactly. And also here's the thing I think that we need as Christians, that we need to distinguish, and you can tell me what you think about this. Not all Black people support Black Lives Matter, and not all Black people are in the Black Lives Matter movement. You can support Black people and what the injustices that are happening to them and other people. It doesn't mean you have to, as a Christian, support Black Lives Matter. It's two separate things. You can support the people. You don't have to support a cause. I could support, let's say, doctors who are, how do I put this? Well, let's say this. I don't support Planned Parenthood. I think the left can take it and twist that to where Christians would be saying, "Oh my gosh, I've got to support them," because they could twist it and say something about, "Well, this is about babies. Oh, okay, babies' lives matter, and Planned Parenthood is concerned about the health of the mother and the baby, so I'm going to support Planned Parenthood now." I gave an off-the-wall example, but we're in kind of an off-the-wall time in our society. So if you're not with us, you're against us. If you're not supporting Black Lives Matter, then you're against Black people. That's what they want you to
think. The Denver Broncos football organization actually tweeted that very statement out, that if you're not for us, you're against us.
Oh, wow.
In the context of this whole thing. Now, that's why I said I'm not going to take a knee with the Black Lives Matter organization.
Exactly.
Because the organization that is the face of this, or at least for a good bit of it anyway, has some, at the very least, questionable affiliations. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's any. Look, if you're going to post on your Facebook page a clenched fist with the phrase Black Lives Matter, you're not going to get my support, because that clenched fist is a Marxist emblem.
And they're now trying to change the
rebellion.
meaning of that. They're trying to change the meaning. But that's how we do. That's what we do in our society these days on the left. They change the definition.
Yeah, well, read Animal Farm.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
That's the way it works. So you're not going to get my support if you're going to post a clenched fist with the term or the phrase Black Lives Matter and get me to be okay with that, because it's not that I'm unsympathetic to injustice. Look, I'm not going to get too personal today, but I can lay my head down at night and know that I have stood against racism all my life from a child. Mm-hmm. And I won't go into the details of why I say that, but I can lay my head down at night and I know I'm not racist because I fought against it. I stood against it even as a child, and paid, the consequences of that in some relationships. But if you're going to have that clenched fist, which screams rebellion, I'm sorry, I'm not getting in with that. I'm not good with that. Now, I want to read a scripture here that I think is appropriate, and I shared this with our congregation this past Shabbat, and it's taken from Isaiah 42. And it's talking about the Messiah. It talks about my servant whom I uphold, my elect in whom my soul delights. I have put my spirit upon him. He shall bring forth judgment to the Gentiles. He will not cry, nor lift up, nor cause his voice to be heard in the street. And it goes on to talk about how he won't break a bruised reed, he won't quench a smoking flax, but he is going to bring forth judgment. He's going to bring forth justice. He will not be discouraged. He will not fail until he has set forth judgment and justice in the earth. So my point for reading that was, this is talking about the Messiah. And this is the same prophecy is quoted in Matthew later when there are people trying to destroy him. They are plotting against him. And he just kind of removed himself from the situation and then continued to do what the Father had sent him to do. And that was my point. If we truly want justice in this world, if we truly want righteousness in this world, we truly want to cultivate an environment where people are not judged based on the color of their skin or what culture they come from or what language they speak, then as God's people, we need to go about God's business, about his business, one person at a time, and not be swayed by the mob mentality.
Right.
Because like I said earlier, the mob that's saying Hosanna right now, or the crowd that's saying Hosanna today, might be screaming crucify him tomorrow, because that's the way that works. We have to be focused on what we know to be true. There's a lot of these things that are going on. We hear all these reports, and some of it, frankly, we don't know what's real.
Right.
Because there have been some things misrepresented to us. Okay. We don't know what was in that policeman's heart when he put his knee on that man's neck for, what was it, 8-9 minutes? Okay. I mean, I don't think there's any question that was overboard and they should have done some. But did he do it because he was black, or did he do it because he was a jerk, or what? You know,
We don't
for
know.
us to be, we don't know. That's right. We don't know. I'm not defending the man, mind you. I'm just saying I don't know what was in his heart when he did that. That's why he's going to stand before a court, and he's going to have to answer for those things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way it should work. But my point for believers is, don't be swayed by the mob mentality,
Mm-hmm.
and have the courage to take a stand for what is right, the right way, and not be pulled into some of this other nonsense. Oh, I would never riot. I would never burn. I would never loot. I'm sure you wouldn't. But are you going to take a knee in a protest where the next guy is willing to loot and riot and burn and pillage? We are not to be unequally yoked. And we shouldn't be unequally yoked with the rioter and the looter and the guy that's going to burn something down, nor should we be unequally yoked with the guy that is going to put his knee on somebody's neck and resist their cries for help and I can't breathe, and just because, we don't want to be unequally yoked with injustice in any way.
Well, and I think that one thing that we have to know is that in the days and times that we're living in now, there is a lot of deception, and I think it's from the father of lies. And one of the things is that just what you were talking about with the fist, that was usually back in the civil rights era. That was the sign of protest, the sign of Black power, and it was all about. Then it was a lot of violence going on, and the Black power, the Black Panthers would use this symbol and all that. But what's happening, and the reason I brought it up, is they're trying to change what that symbology means now. That it's not a symbol for Black power. It's not a symbol for hate. It's not a symbol for violence. Now it's something else. It means something. It means something good now. And
what does it mean?
I can't remember the meaning of it, to be honest with you, but it was more like, oh, it's just a coming together of people, something like that. My point is that the father of all lies is changing the definition of what it is to get people to comply, to get people to feel like, oh my gosh, well, it's just a fun-loving group now. This is a group that started out one way, and people have forgotten, and they're being deceived about who these people are, who funds these people. This is the Marxist group. These are people that once went and rioted and not necessarily looting, but rioted in college campuses. These are people that are anti-cop, period, and say things against police officers that are anti-cop, want to defund the police department, and on and on. Do they have some good points that they like? Yes. But for the majority of it, the way it started out, the very foundations of it, the root of it is not good. And as a Christian, if you're being deceived by what you are being told now, without going back and looking into what Black Lives Matter is all about, then you will follow along with the group, and you'll follow along with the lies, and you'll find yourself in a place that as a Christian, you probably don't want to be. And so,
Well, and that's why I say, Susan, that, we have to be very careful not to be swept away with the mob mentality.
Yes.
And don't, look, I think there are a lot of people who don't want to be viewed by culture as being insensitive to injustices, whatever the injustice is. And so when this, fervor is, building, they felt, oh, we got to do something. We got to show people that we're not a racist. We're not a this, we're
Right.
not a that. And they get swept away by that. Well, you know what? Keep your eyes on the Messiah. Follow his lead. Don't try to be like them over there. Don't try to be like him over there. Try to be like the Messiah. Follow his lead. And if you keep your eyes on him, then he's not going to lead you wrong. Okay. And I guarantee you, if you're following the Messiah, then you're going to show forth the fruits of someone who is not a racist, who's not a bigot, who's not a murderer, who's not a rapist, who's not a this, who's not a that. You're going to show forth the fruit that resembles him. And then people are going to be drawn to that, one person at a time. That's the way this works, through relationships. So do I have a political opinion? Yes, I do. We come on this program and we voice that political opinion. But ultimately, even, your opinion, my opinion, all have to give way to what God says.
Exactly.
And what does he want me to do? And how does he want me to respond? So we have to keep our eyes on the Messiah in this because, again, we may find ourselves, as you just said, when this is all said and done, in a camp that we really had no intention of being in. We might find ourselves in a situation where we didn't really see it going this way. And I don't care what kind of rebranding they're trying to do with the clenched fist. Here's what it says from its beginning: rebellion.
Yeah.
And usually that rebellion is not about police departments. It's not usually about Republican or Democrat or governments even. It's ultimately resistance and rebellion against God, because that is the origin. That is the mindset behind that clenched fist. Yes, other groups have come along. They've adapted it for their agenda and their goals and their purpose. So be it. But that is what it screams to me: rebellion against authority, ultimately God's authority.
Absolutely.
That's why I will not associate with that at all.
Now, Michael Walker said they don't care about justice. They burn, loot, and burn. Ami Shalom said, was reading Jeremiah this morning and saw how the good and bad interchanged, but then there were the set apart ones, truly today. And Sally said, get rid of that. And and again, when Christians, if you're falling into this cancel culture that we see today, that if you believe that you've got something to feel guilty about, that you did something wrong even though it really wasn't you, and that you should apologize for people that had nothing to do with you, that you weren't even born when those people are around, you're getting deceived. You're truly being deceived. And the same thing can happen with Antifa. We have this group who's sitting there in Seattle who is commandeered, a 6 foot city block, or 6 city block, I should say, taken over the police precinct, has graffitied everything. Everything looks like trash there. It's because it's destructive. There could be some people out there who say, oh, we should love those people. Well, we should love everyone. We don't have to love and accept their actions. There was a man who went in there the other day who was preaching the gospel. Now, I thought in Chaz, or CHOP as they call it today, I thought everybody was welcome. I thought this was, come on in, anybody, and we just don't like cops. Well, apparently they don't like God's word either, because immediately when this man came in, you can see this in a video, they swarmed on him like flies. They had their hands on him, which in most states, that's an assault and battery when you touch somebody without their permission. One guy I saw in a video had his arm around the guy's neck as in a chokehold, like the police, that they don't want, the police to do. And then they forced this man out by pushing him physically. One guy stole his cell phone to get him out. So here you go again, with something that people would look at and go, oh, well, this is great. We're resisting. We're not following America. We're getting rid of the police. We're socialists and communists and all is great. You can see that in its sinful nature, man, this is a good example of man in his sinful nature is right there in the state of Chaz or CHOP.
This is an example of what happens when there are no boundaries. It's anarchy.
Anarchy, totally.
Liberty without law results in lawlessness. And this is what you've got going on. So the seeds had been sown probably a long time ago in a lot of these other very, very liberal spots in the country. Seattle's a beautiful city as far as looking at it from a distance, but when you get up close and you see bizarre things. And I have friends that live in Seattle, so I think they back me up on that. It's a beautiful area, but it is a very strange place. Portland, Oregon would fall into this category too. But anyway, if the authorities in Seattle have already given up on this, and this is only going to embolden people like that.
Yeah.
But I also heard that they had a fire and they had to call in. They wanted the fire department to come in, and they're already running out of supplies, so they're wanting somebody to kind of help them out from the outside. Probably shouldn't bait me with commenting on that too much, but this is the lawlessness that's growing, and if they get a foothold, and they seemingly have, it's going to expand. And this is what you and I have to look forward to, unless somebody has not only the power, but the will to do what needs to be done. And by that, I mean to enforce the boundaries and not allow these things to take root. I don't see it happening with the mayor of Seattle. I don't see it happening with the governor of Washington. We'll just have to see what occurs.
Well, the mayor's already said it's the summer of love, so I don't think the mayor is going to be too.
And that turned out really well, by the way, right?
Yes.
That went so well.
Well, and I think that she's at odds with the police, because the police want to come back in and take over the precinct, and they don't, doesn't necessarily have the mayor have the same viewpoint. But and that poses a question too. We've seen. The George Floyd thing that everybody, I think, all together says that was just tragic. That was just wrong. Something needs to be done.
Yeah, that was just way too much.
Way too much. And then we have Rayshard Brooks that everybody's looking at. Now that, I think, that happened in Atlanta. And if people don't know about that, I'll just very cursory tell you, this was a man who was sitting in the drive-thru. He was asleep in his car. This is what's on the video that I saw. He is asleep in this car. The police come up and ask him, are you okay? It was so cordial, everything. It was very professional, respectful, and all that. They ask him to pull over out of the drive-thru. He does, and then they bring him out later. The other cop comes up, the one that actually ends up shooting him, comes up to him and asks him to take a breathalyzer test. So everything is going well. He takes a breathalyzer test. It looks like it's at a 1.08 or something close to that, which is way over the legal limit. So the police officer says, well, we're going to, have to arrest you because of that. He turns around and then everything breaks loose. I mean, that's where, Mr. Brooks is starting to fight the police. There's a struggle that ensues. I think I don't know if I heard that he punched the police. I didn't see that, but that's what I've heard. At one point, Mr. Brooks takes the taser of the other cop and starts to run. And then he turns around. You can see it in the film. He turns around and he fires off the taser, and the police officer shoots him. According to the medical examiner's report, Mr. Brooks was shot twice in the back. And it could be because of the angle that he was turned around. It could be that he was running. But what's going to come down to, now, as an attorney, a former attorney, I should say, I look at that and I say, what's the court going to look at? What's going to be the problem here? The problem's going to be, was the man no longer a threat when the police shot him? Did they have the right to shoot him when he's running away, when they fire the taser? There's no threat there. What does the law say on the books for the Atlanta police? It's going to be a whole bunch of things. Doesn't mean I agree. I'm just telling you the thought process. People sometimes think when I do that I've picked a side or whatever. I haven't. I'm telling you what a court's going to look at, because I've been a practicing attorney. I know what you have to prove and what they're going to look at. So looking at that, I watched the mayor of Atlanta, who is a black woman, I believe. She's a woman of color anyway. And she came out yesterday, and I was pretty disappointed in what she said. Her name is something Lance Bottoms. I'll just say Miss Bottoms. I know she has two names, but I don't know what it is. But here's what she said in the press conference. And I thought, as an elected official, this is really something she should not have said. She said, I could see that he wanted to go to his daughter's birthday and he realized he was going to get locked up and miss it. So he did something stupid. And I was thinking, wow. So you're equating, wrestling police officers, taking their taser, resisting arrest, getting shot,
passing out drunk.
Right.
To begin with.
Right. Means that oh my gosh, I'm going to miss my daughter's birthday party.
Yeah. Well,
are we saying now that crime is okay? I mean, aren't we giving that a pass too? Like what she said. And she's like, she said another word, but she's like, I was ticked off at seeing this, but there's nothing I can do, but I'm going to reform the police department right now with an executive order.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Hillary didn't intend to break the law when she got rid of all those emails and, bleach bid all those disks. Look, whatever led to it is unfortunate that somebody dies.
Yes.
So, but what are the police supposed to do? I mean, so you've got all this going on. It's was it dark? Was it light when this was all going? Was it at night?
It was at night.
Was it during the day?
Yeah.
It was at night?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so that's what I was thinking. So you've got a guy who's already grabbed something from a cop. It's happening very fast. He points something, what is the guy supposed to do? Wait until they get shot, or something happens until they respond? Because what is going to happen with this mob mentality and just villainizing all policemen, is that eventually these guys and these ladies are just going to say, to heck with this. I'm out of here.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would be a law enforcement in this day and time with what you're going to have to deal with. That doesn't mean that there aren't things that can be adjusted as far as tactics. I personally believe that some law enforcement agencies go way overboard.
Yeah.
I don't want a militarized police force, quite frankly. But at the same time, I don't want lawlessness to reign in the streets. So there has to be a balance. I think that it's appropriate to call for there to be some oversight and some reforms in how you administer the law, so to speak. I don't have any problems with that. And putting your knee on the guy's neck while he's telling you he can't breathe should cause somebody to say, okay, let's get this guy in cuffs and, give him some relief. There's other things that I've seen. I used to watch Live PD until they took it off the air because, you can't be watching anything like that.
Right.
And I've seen how cops have sometimes, in my opinion, gone overboard, but I've also seen what they've had to deal with, what they've had to put up with, and all of the stuff that they have to be subjected to. So what's going to happen, Susan, is if this continues, and if these law enforcement officers don't feel that they have the support of their superiors and of the people who are in authority, these politicians who come and go, they're going to start just quitting, saying the heck with this. And then that's just going to accentuate the lawlessness. So it's a very, very troubling situation. And so that'll bring me back full circle to what I said earlier. This is not going to be resolved by holding a sign.
No.
This is a heart issue. This is a spiritual issue. This is the byproduct of things that have been in motion long before George Floyd, that have nothing to do with black and white and police and citizen. This has to do with us and God.
Now, Sally said he drove a 3,000-pound weapon to Wendy's, which, is true. And then you look at that, and then Wendy's had to pay the price afterwards, where somebody set Wendy's on fire because the guy was in line at Wendy's. Now that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. That's, anyway.
Well, and also I wanted to say, I went through the police academy and I had the training on what you should do and how to, how to go after somebody and how to take them down and all that. And I just want to say, we were put in scenarios and situations where we were made to decide what to do and kind of at a moment's notice. Should I fire my weapon? Should I not fire my weapon? And it's so easy for everybody on Monday morning quarterbacking to sit back and say, well, the cop should have done this, the cop should have done that, or I wouldn't have done that. Well, da 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 da. When you're in that situation, it's not that easy. It really isn't. Sometimes cops mess up because cops mess up, not because they hate somebody, not because
Right.
this, that, and the other, or they're not well trained, or they're not well educated. I mean, there are a number of reasons. It doesn't always go back to race.
And it doesn't always follow the textbook. I mean,
Right.
in war, there's the so-called fog of war. There's friendly fire.
Right.
When you get people shooting at you, and with all the training in the world, that doesn't mean that you're going to just, go by that training. You're out to save your own skin,
Yeah.
and things happen. So, we expect a lot out of our law enforcement officers, and not that that's wrong
Yeah.
to expect a lot, but we also need to understand that these are human beings, and there's great law enforcement officers. There's probably a few bad ones, just like there's great, I don't know, garbage collectors, and there's probably a few bad ones
It's
too.
human nature. It's human nature.
Right, and that's the issue. So,
Right.
did the officer pin Mr. Floyd down because he was black, or did he pin him down because he was a jerk?
Yeah. Or did he
You know,
pin him down because it was allowed in their Minneapolis policy to do that, even chokeholds and everything else? So, was the guy following policy? Should he have known better? My answer is, again, I wasn't there. It looks like he should have known better. You had other
yeah,
people
I
on
think
top of
so.
him. Yeah. So, but I
Yeah, I
don't
think so.
know. I don't know until I hear the testimony of those people exactly what the truth is or what the factual basis is. And I'm not going to try somebody and convict them in the public forum. Like the guy's already been convicted. I mean, he might as well hang it up, So
Yeah,
um,
his life is pretty much over.
it's over.
Um,
And some people would say that's fine because George Floyd's life's over and he took his life. So again, let's just we can wait to get the facts of the case
well,
before we do it.
just as believers should not be okay with Mr. Floyd's death, they shouldn't be okay with this guy's life just being over just because that seems fair. That helps my
Right.
feelings.
Right.
That is not a biblical response.
Right.
So anyone who says they're a believer and is following that line of thinking needs to kind of go back and read the Bible again. I'm not defending the man.
Exactly.
He needs to have his day in court,
Right.
but look, let's go back to the Antifa thing though. Look how this thing has been exploited and used by people we know to be revolutionaries, people we know to be Marxist, socialist, communists, these types who definitely want the overthrow of the government. They've already kind of shown us what they're about by this, what did you call it? Chaz, chop,
Chaz and
something
chop.
or other, whatever. Okay. Whatever
Uh,
trips your trigger there.
exactly.
But they've shown what this is really, really all
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. It's lawlessness. All of what we're seeing is lawlessness. And it really is like we've been talking about, it's the spiritual nature of human beings and where we are in our society today. As evil grows, as darkness grows, we're going to see more lawlessness. You can call it by whatever name you want, but it is lawlessness. Now,
Yeah.
President Trump, just right before we went on, he did sign an executive order for police reform. And he did this, he said this had been in the works before George Floyd's death. It wasn't based on that, but he's talked to police officers and other leaders and the families of those who have had loved ones that have died by being shot by police officers. And part of what they're going to do is no chokehold unless, the officer's life is in danger. Create a national database so the cops that are using excessive force can't quit one police department and go to another and not be the police department that hires him or her doesn't know that they've been in trouble before. And incentivize co-responder programs, have mental health experts that go with police officers that will come on the scene in nonviolent calls like it's homelessness, addictions, and mental health issues. And as I've said, we have that already in California. It's dangerous. People do it. As a mental health expert, I wouldn't do it because I think, riding along with the police anyway, especially these days, is something that you probably don't want to do. And you are really dependent on the police officer taking care of you while you're in that situation because you yourself are not armed, not in California, at least. So I think, the things that they're doing to reform some of the problems that people in general see in police departments is a really good thing. Do I think that everybody in the police department, do I think they need to be defunded? Absolutely not. That you want to bring on lawlessness? Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Totally ridiculous. But, are there all bad cops? No. Are there all good cops? No. They can root them out. And I think, honestly, having gone to the police academy myself, I can say the training I got was good, but I think it needs to be better. And I think I was like a 3-month course, I believe. It was a lot of physical rather than just the book part of it. I think the book part of it needs to be enhanced. And it's probably a lot better than when I went in the 80s. So it's even probably better for a lot of departments now. But I think a lot of people on the police department, they have a high school education. They're not college educated. They're not, they didn't go to grad school. They didn't do all that. So more time and effort needs to be spent on why you're doing these things, why we don't want you to do these things, and what it all means. So that's what I would do. Oops. And I see that. There we go. We froze for a second. Sorry.
Well, let me say this before we move on. I'm very much in support of law enforcement.
Absolutely.
I have family. All my life, I've had family that are in law enforcement. I know people in law enforcement. We have people in law enforcement that are part of our congregation and help us out here. And, we are in full support of law enforcement.
Absolutely.
That doesn't mean that every individual in law enforcement is exempt from any scrutiny or even critique. But I'm absolutely not for the idea of a clenched fist raised in defiance and to say we need to get rid of this.
No way.
Absolutely not. And so everybody who wants to get mad at me, go ahead and get mad at me and do all the stuff you need to do. But at the same time, I am not for discriminating, hating somebody, slurring against somebody because they're a different color skin, because they speak a different language, they come from a different culture. I'm not for that either.
And you know why, Bill? Because you believe in the principles of the Bible.
Right.
And everybody is created by God, and you are taught by the principles of the Bible to love everyone.
I may not like everybody, right, but I am supposed to love everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. I tell the congregation all the time, the hardest commandment in all of the Bible, as far as I'm concerned, the hardest commandment in all the Bible is the one that says, love your neighbor as yourself.
I know. It is.
That is the most difficult one. Yeah. And because when you can do that, then maybe you can say that you truly love God with all your heart, your soul, your strength. And that, all these things that we talk about, particularly this topic, boils down to that.
Yeah,
right. And as believers, and this would be my point, even though we may feel very passionate about what's going on right now, one way or the other, we must be very, very careful, diligent, not to behave like the world, not to adopt the tactics of the world because of our passion on a particular topic. We need to follow the example of the Messiah, who we just read in the prophecy in Isaiah 42, you will not hear his voice in the street. Now, what does that mean? To me, it says you're not going to hear him going about, just raising a ruckus about his mission and what he's here, and you need to do this and you need to do that. What we see the Messiah doing is one person at a time, going and, and doing what the Father said to do, saying what the Father said to say. Now, there was that occasion that he did make a whip one time. He took the time to form a whip, and he chased some people out of his father's house, because it says that he would be zealous for his father's house.
Right.
And I like to joke and to say the reason he took a whip and did that was because they had not yet invented rebar. But my point here is that he was zealous for his father's house,
Right.
not necessarily his own agenda.
Right.
Okay?
And I think that's too is what we have to remember. You can separate the person from the actions of that person. You can love the person. It doesn't mean you necessarily love the actions and the choices they make. So, and it doesn't mean you have to be a part of the actions that they do. And if you hang out with that person who's doing actions that are inappropriate, you're going to be right there labeled in that same group.
Well, that's why we're not to be unequally yoked.
Exactly.
And as far as separating actions from the person, something else I like to tell everybody is mercy does not equate to approval.
Yeah.
Just because you have mercy on someone, we'll use the policeman who's now in jail charged with the murder of Mr. Floyd. Okay. Just because I'm not calling for his head on a pike doesn't mean that I'm okay with what he did.
Exactly.
Mercy does not equate to approval. What the Bible has established and what our system has tried to enforce is everybody needs to have their day in court. He's been charged, let him answer the charges, and then let a jury decide if the argument is made successfully that he had the intent to murder this man, and then, and then we'll see what happens then.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, as Christians, that this discussion that we've had today I think is a really important point, because it is getting to be where the people who are out there, the people of this world who don't necessarily follow God's word, are saying, if you're not with me, you're against me. If you're not with us, you're against us. And Christians need to stop and think about what is being said to them. And then Monique said, mercy does not equate to approval. Amen, Bill. Amen. And remember that when people are telling you that, you've got to follow God's principles, not what people of this world are telling you that you must do. All right, so let's move on to the other topic that we have really quickly that we can cover. This was yesterday. The Supreme Court ruled in favor of LGBT, basically, and declined to hear sanctuary and gun law cases. Yesterday, the Supreme Court ruled that existing federal law forbids job discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or transgender status. And that was a 6-3. The court said that Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which makes it illegal for employers to discriminate because of a person's sex, among other factors, also now will cover sexual orientation and transgender status. And that was the majority opinion was given by the Trump appointee, Neil Gorsuch, and John Roberts. Now, when you're looking at that, what we have seen yesterday is the court became the legislature yesterday and rewrote the law. That's what happened yesterday.
Well, I think it's been going on for a while, but go ahead.
Yeah. But I'm saying that's what came out of that yesterday. They've changed the word sex, so the founding fathers had no intentions of it being anything other than male, female, and gender, right? They've changed it now to the today's words, what today's words are.
Yeah, well, I guess that's appropriate, seeing that a clenched fist that used to mean one thing now means something good, right?
Exactly. Deception. And what's it going to do, Bill? Because look at this. If, let's say you're a church and you are, let's just take Catholic Church, okay? You're a Catholic church and you tell people in order to be hired here, you can't be living together and have a homosexual relationship. Think that's going to go against the Catholic Church or for the Catholic Church after this?
Well, I have been out of the loop for a few days, so I don't know if there were any kind of conditions or exemptions or exceptions.
No, not really. But.
So then that means that there are going to be churches that are going to be overwhelmed with people trying to get on there who are going to follow these particular lifestyles simply to make the point.
Right.
simply to force it upon us. And so this is what we as believers are being dealt with, which goes back to something else. You better know what you believe. You better know in whom you have placed your trust and your confidence, because you, we all, in some way, some form or fashion, are going to be asked to kneel.
Yes. Yep.
To more than just, a Black Lives Matter protest.
Yep.
We're going to be asked to kneel to much more than that. And so if you are going to be swayed by public opinion today, that is likely that you're going to be swayed by popular opinion in the future. There's 3 men in the Bible, and I know that people are some will have heartburn over what I'm about to say. But if you're going to bow a knee to public opinion today, if that is really why you're doing what you're doing, if you're going to bow the knee because of popular opinion today, then decisions like you just mentioned are going to force you and put the pressure on you to bow a knee to public opinion tomorrow. Yep. And the next day and the next day.
Right.
There are 3 men in Scripture, we've heard about them all our lives, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who did not bow down to the image and bow down to the idols that had been made by Nebuchadnezzar. They didn't wake up one day and decide they're not going to do that. They had already been making decisions long before that, because in Daniel chapter 1, when they were taken into Nebuchadnezzar's academy and they were told to eat the king's meat and drink the king's wine, they, along with Daniel, refused to do it because they purposed in their heart not to defile themselves in this way. My point is, if you can't withstand the pressure of public opinion today to stand for what is right,
right,
and that is right in God's eyes, not in yours, not in theirs, but in God's eyes.
Right.
If you won't do that today, then don't tell me you're going to do it tomorrow when the chips are even, higher. And right. So, that's a troubling development. I guarantee you that churches and ministries are going to be
bombarded.
Yeah, that's a good word.
Vicky said, I heard this is going to get rid of male-female bathrooms, and if that is the case, I heard that this would impact pedophilia by making it legal. I don't know. We still have the First Amendment. You have your right to religious beliefs and all of that. It's going to cause a lot more cases to come before the court than it would have been had they just left it alone. And
you would think that these guys would realize that, wouldn't they?
Well, yeah, you would. Gorsuch said an employer who fired an individual for being homosexual or transgender fires that person for traits or actions it would not have questioned in members of a different sex. Sex plays a necessary and undistinguishable role in the decision, exactly what Title VII forbids. Those who adopted the Civil Rights Act might not have anticipated their work would lead to this particular result, but the limits of the drafter's imagination supply no reason to ignore the law's demands. Only the written word is the law, and all persons are entitled to its benefit.
Well, so much for staunch conservatism.
Yeah. Well, again, maybe the definition of staunch conservatism has changed, right, Bill? Everything else has changed, so why not that?
Well, I'd say that's a foregone conclusion there.
Conclusion. The other things that the court did not take up was the sanctuary law in California. They refused to hear the case, and President Trump has been fighting with California, especially, for a long time. They left intact the rules that prohibit law enforcement officials from aiding federal agents in taking custody of immigrants as they are released from jail. So it means that when the police departments in California do not have to inform ICE when they have let somebody go, let them go out of custody as an illegal immigrant. They don't have to inform ICE so that ICE can come pick them up. It's like, we don't have to do that. And the court agrees with them that because they're saying we're not going to hear the case, whatever the law is right now stands in place, and that's the law. You don't have to inform ICE about those illegally in the country that have been let go from police detention. So,
well, again, that is troubling.
Yeah, and also they also now are cases. So the gun law is going to stand in California which people in California wanted to be able to carry guns in public and all that. And in California, you can deny a permit for that. So it's allowing each state to give their opinion on who should have a gun and who shouldn't, who should be allowed to carry in public and who shouldn't. So people look at that as, it's trampling on our Second Amendment rights because the Supreme Court wouldn't take it up.
Well, here's the passage that comes to mind when I hear all these things, and you see what's likely to unfold. It's in Matthew chapter 24, and the Messiah said, because iniquity, I think that's the way the King James puts it, but the word would be lawlessness.
Uh-huh.
Because lawlessness is going to abound, it says the love of many will grow cold. And that, to me, is talking about believers, that their love for him will grow cold. Maybe they're frustrated, maybe they're overwhelmed, maybe they can't take the pressure, maybe they think, well, why aren't you helping us? Why are you letting this happen? Whatever the motivation, the love of many will grow cold. But then he goes on and he says, but the one who endures till the end, that's the one that'll be saved. And so that's the word for the day, boys and girls. Perseverance, endurance, overcoming. These are things that shouldn't take us by surprise. We've heard about them all our lives. We've saw the movies back in the 70s. We've heard all of the different prophecy teachers that have come along through the days, and we've read all the books. We've heard all of these things. It's just that now we're living through these things, and these things are beginning to materialize in front of us. And so we're the generation, apparently, that have been chosen to overcome, to endure, to persevere. And so that's why we're going to have to keep our eyes on the Messiah. If you get your eyes on the press, the media, the Black Lives Matter, this organization, that organization, and if you go with the trend, you're going to get swept away, just like the flood swept people away during the time of Noah. We've got to keep our eyes on the Messiah, lay aside every weight and the sin that so easily besets us, because we have been called to overcome.
Absolutely. And, the father of lies is also the father of confusion. The deception that you're seeing is brought about by confusion from Satan. It's not from God. And that's why, like Bill is saying, that we have to continue to draw closer to God and keep focused on God, because everything around us is going to become more and more confused. It's going to be hard to know what's real and what isn't real. So
amen to that.
Amen. So thank you, everybody, for being here today. I'm so glad this worked. I'm so glad that we got to bring everybody on and made this happen. And so next week, we'll be back doing either this or something back with Brandon. We'll have to wait and see how everything goes. But thank you again so much for being here. God bless you. Please share this with everybody you know. Share the show. And until then, we'll see you again next week. Take care.